Are you a coward or a hero?
Chances are, with your lagna lord in the 3rd house, you're probably a hero. But there's a lot more to it than that.
Today, we will be covering some of our observations for anyone with their lagna lord in the 3rd house of their astrological birth chart. Make sure you watch all the way to the end of this video for our tips on how you can take advantage of this astrological placement.
This video is going to apply to you if you have the lord of your ascendant sign going into the 3rd house of your birth chart from the ascendant or from the moon. So that would be, if you look at the chart from the moon, the lord of that sign goes into the 3rd house from the moon.
In Vedic astrology, the lagna, or ascendant, lord, is a very crucial planet, and it represents the self, vitality, and your overall life path.
When the lagna lord is placed in the 3rd house, it influences the native's life through themes associated with the 3rd house, such as courage, communication, siblings, short journeys, skills, initiative, and self-efforts.
So the positives about this is people with this placement tend to have a lot of courage and initiative. So they're often bold, assertive, they're willing to take risks. The lagna lord in the 3rd house strengthens the ability to act decisively and pursue goals with determination.
This placement can also give very good communication skills or powerful communication skills. It will enhance the native's ability to engage in verbal or written expression of ideas because the 3rd house governs communication in general, especially more organized forms of communication. Speech itself will be the 2nd house, but sort of planned or communication which is orderly in some way, like a text or an email or a speech or public speaking or something which is said that has been thought about for a while and kind of formulated. That's 3rd house communication. So the native may excel in fields like writing, speaking, journalism, and teaching.
And this placement also gives the native really strong willpower. The presence of the lagna lord in the 3rd house will indicate a strong desire to achieve objectives, and it's often going to be through self-effort and perseverance, which is a great thing.
Yeah, and that can also be signified because the 3rd house is actually the 8th from the 8th. The 8th house represents struggles and personal transformation, and as the 8th from the 8th, the 3rd house also gets some significations in it of the intense ability in this person to go through whatever that personal transformation is in order to become what it is that they want to be, or to engage in those self-efforts to accomplish their goals.
Also, I just had a thought and a question. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
Isn't Mars the karaka of the 3rd house?
Mars is the natural karaka of the 3rd house.
So so when we say that each house has like a planet that is naturally the karaka or significator, and Mars being the planet of action and energy and courage and boldness, it kind of makes a lot of sense that the 3rd house also deals with similar themes.
So when a planet has a significator house, that just means in some ways that all the natural significations of that planet and all the natural significations of that house kind of overlap, and so that planet kind of loves that house. So Mars as lagna lord in the 3rd house is very good if you have that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, as you continue, of course, to watch our videos and learn, you'll see how it's like everything's connected. Oh, we talk about Mars and we learn this about Mars, and then it's the natural karaka of the 3rd house, and it's so similar. Because really, it all kind of fits together perfectly, which is kind of the really fun part of learning astrology, I think.
It just keeps opening up and kind of like blossoming more and more as you get into it.
Blossom.
So this placement can also be related to the development of skills. So the third house is linked to dexterity because it represents the hands, the arms, the shoulders in the physical body. So it can be seen as representing skills in general, or the ability in an individual to use their hands to do something. So this person can have like magic hands, or like if this person gives you a massage, you probably really enjoy it. They can do things with their hands. So Paladipika, a classical text on Vedic astrology, also suggests that the native with the lagna lord in the third house is going to be industrious and skillful, but they may face struggles if the planet is weak by sign placement or aspected by malefics.
So the native might develop proficiency in manual skills, arts, technical abilities. This person can easily follow, a recipe or instructions. For me, I hate building like those, furniture pieces. They come broken apart and with an instruction set. And clearly it's not giving too much away about myself, but that's not one of my strong suits. But, these people with their lagna lord in the third house are very, very good at that.
Yeah.
And they're very handy to have around, of course. So it's great to have someone put together your furniture or fix things. And that's what we mean by hands. Like, so if you think about any sort of artist, any sort of person that just works with their hands, they have probably a really good placement in their third house.
Yeah.
Or their lagna lord.
And you can think about this if you have this placement or you know someone that has this placement. This person will be, this is the kind of person that can kind of look almost anything up on YouTube or on the internet and then just figure out how to do it. Because the third house also represents hobbies and things like that. So this is the kind of person that can suddenly decide that they want to bake some super obscure form of bread or something, and then they spend the whole day looking at YouTube videos and instructions on how to do that, and then they do it, and then it's good. Whereas other people might have a little bit more of a struggle
different
with it.
learning styles.
So it's a very DIY kind of placement.
I like that.
So the third house can also be related to short travels. So this native may undertake frequent short journeys that are beneficial, potentially relating to their work or career. It can also be beneficial for their learning or personal growth. So they can learn through traveling around, not long distance travel. Of course, other placements could be there in the chart for that, but this more represents like driving around or walking around or going on little adventures.
Like your day-to-day driving to and from work or errands.
Or walking around the neighborhood or like going on a hike or something like that.
This person with the lagna lord in the third house will typically have an entrepreneurial spirit. It can indicate a knack for initiating ventures, especially those that require any sort of communication or networking. And that's, of course, because the third house also does represent communication. So skills with hands, communication. So this is where a person would be very oriented in their business. So some of the potential negatives of a placement of the lagna lord in the third house. There could be some overexertion. This person often will overextend themselves through excessive effort and excessive ambition. They want to accomplish all of their goals. And of course, that could lead to physical fatigue, mental fatigue, emotional fatigue, just kind of trying to accomplish everything all at once, maybe not pacing it out a little bit better.
And that can happen because the lagna lord in the third house, especially if it's well placed, can give that person a lot of courage and a lot of the ability to accomplish those things on their own that they have wanted to accomplish in the past. So they kind of will have a lot of times a track record in their mind of like, well, I decided to do this and I did it. I decided to do this and I did it. So that can create such a strong amount of confidence that then they're like, well, I can decide to do all these things and do all of them. And then they can end up accidentally overextending because of that and get kind of like drained.
Yeah.
So
and then
something to watch out for.
Yeah, and then you're not accomplishing your goals, which
Yeah.
is what you want to be doing. So that can create quite the frustration.
Yeah.
So the third house also does represent siblings. So if there are negative or malefic aspects or afflictions to the lagna lord in the third house, you could potentially have some issues or conflicts with your siblings, maybe misunderstandings, disputes. And also with your neighbors too, because that's also kind of looped into the third house in terms of significations. But then, of course, if you have a really, a lot of benefic influence there, more than likely you're going to actually have, your siblings are going to be a really good influence on your life and like very helpful to you.
Yeah.
And we've definitely seen in people's charts both happening.
Yeah, and there can be positives and negatives to malefics or benefics in the third house. So you got to take the good and take the bad at the same time.
Yeah.
So this position can also create restlessness, a feeling of restlessness. And it's again because that third house dynamic energy, the third house energy is not really considered super negative like the 6th, 8th, or 12th house, but it's also not considered the most benefic. So that can create a little bit of restless, scattered energy and a little bit of a tendency, like we said before, to take on too many tasks and then always be a little bit stressed out by wanting to be able to get those tasks done. And because the third house also represents self-efforts, a lot of the things that you may take on will be things that you can do yourself or plan to do yourself, but then they may not be things that if you stop working on them, other people can pick up and finish for you. So it's not as much of a team-oriented position, and that can create that stress because you signed up to do all this different stuff, and then you have to carry it out to completion.
Yeah.
So this person, we can see a little bit of an impulsiveness coming up. And again, it's like we keep talking about the third house. It's almost like we're indirectly talking about Mars.
That was literally in my head. I was thinking
a little
that.
bit too. So impulsiveness, this native may act hastily or speak without thinking ahead of time what they're going to say. So they're just speaking and their thoughts are coming out as they're talking, which can sometimes get them into a little bit of trouble, or they may have some reputational issues because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing to be aware of with this placement, there could be some challenges in stability. The third house's focus on movement and change may create a little difficulty in maintaining long-term stability, unless you balance that with other factors in the chart, or you yourself are, aware of that and doing things to help stay stable and balanced. So that's something really important, because most people do need a sense of stability in order to accomplish your goals, which of course is very important in this person's placement of lagna lord in the third house. And some people, everyone to each their own. Some people thrive in chaos. That's a saying, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and you could have that ability. And one of the astrological reasons for this assessment of a person with a lagna lord in the third house is that the third house is actually the 12th house from the 4th, which represents your stability, which represents your home, which represents your living situation. And the 12th represents loss or going away from something. And so it's kind of like, and if you think about traveling around, that means you went out of your house and you're away from your house or stability. So the orientation of this person is not as much toward trying to have the stability as much. And so because the orientation is not towards trying to have or maintain that 4th house energy, you can end up kind of losing it as a result.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and just things to consider of maybe the why and the how is the third house. Every house has a natural nature to it. And so the third house is considered a upachaya house, which means that there are going to be challenges surrounding this placement. And the good thing about the Upachaya houses is they improve over time. They're houses that get better with time. Okay, so it's not like a doomed house. It just might start out a little rocky, but over time, as you grow, as you mature, as you learn, things in that house just kind of start to improve for you. And that's because Upachaya literally means increment or increase. So increase over time.
Slowly, slowly, slowly.
Yeah. And the Lagna Lord's placement here would suggest that the native's efforts and courage will yield results over time. And that's going to be very dependent on you and your individual chart and, of course, the effort you put in. But, some people are going to achieve their goals faster than others. But in general, over time, all of it will come together for you.
Yeah, and this is the kind of thing where there are some astrological placements where it might signify actually that you get something without putting your effort into it.
Right.
That's a different kind of placement. This placement really highlights that nature and that need to put your effort into it. What you put into it is what you get out of it. So the specific qualities of the Lagna Lord, for example, if the planet as the Lagna Lord is Jupiter, placed in the third house, or if the planet as the Lagna Lord is Mars, placed in the third house. These are going to influence kind of the nature of the outcomes that happen as a result of this placement. So Jupiter as a Lagna Lord in the third house may enhance your wisdom and communication abilities, especially strategic or higher forms of sophisticated communication. But Mars may emphasize more of the aggression or the boldness or the adventurous spirit or the ability. A person with Mars in the third house, especially as the Lagna Lord, could be very oriented towards fighting or could be very oriented towards striking forms of martial arts because it represents the hands.
In fact, I think we've looked at a few of like the UFC fighters charts, and I think we've seen some placements of Mars in the third house.
An interesting fact about that is that if you see Mars placed in the 12th house, that can make someone, let's say someone gets into martial arts with Mars in the 12th house, they'll be really naturally good at kicking, all kinds of different forms of kicking. Whereas if it's in the third house, because it's hands, they're gonna be more oriented towards striking. So
beautiful astrology, just making sense.
So in the Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, which is one of the foremost classical texts on Vedic astrology, it gives a little bit of a secret trick to interpreting the nature of planets placed in the third house, and that is that when there are only benefics and benefic influence on the third house, one of the negatives that this can result in is it can create a little bit of because the third house represents courage, but benefic planets are kind of nice, it can create a lack of courage or kind of cowardice or a little bit of not wanting to be brave or bold. But then, if malefic planets are placed there, that's considered a very good thing in a lot of ways, not every single way, but it's considered a very good thing because it gives the person naturally a lot of courage, bravery to just do whatever it is, to say whatever they need to say, to communicate about whatever they need to communicate about, and not really be afraid of it. And that also, because it's an Upachaya house, will grow slowly over time. They'll become more and more courageous.
And as you continue to learn about astrology, especially with Vedic astrology, you'll find how important dasha periods are. We've mentioned them before, and we'll probably do more deep dives into things that are related to dasha periods. But in general, any effect that is going on in your chart, and so since today we're talking about the Lagna Lord in the third house, it's going to be most pronounced during the dasha or antradasha, which is the sub-period of the Lagna Lord. So the other thing to consider is the sign placement. So your Lagna Lord in the third house, but what sign is it in? So whatever sign it sits in, you have to consider, is this in a friendly sign? Is it exalted? Is it debilitated? Is it in an enemy sign? That's also going to shape the way that this placement is expressed. So for example, if you are a Scorpio ascendant and you have Mars placed, Mars would be your lagna lord because Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. And then Mars is in your 3rd house, the sign would be Capricorn. Mars happens to be exalted in the sign of Capricorn. So that is going to shape the expression, and because it's exalted, it's going to manifest very positive results, especially during the Dasha period.
Especially during the Dasha period. So what are our special tips?
Oh yes, we promised at the end of the video.
For taking advantage.
So if you made it to the end of the video,
congratulations.
Congratulations. Here are your tips.
All right, so if you have Lagna Lord in the 3rd house, these things can definitely be really helpful for you. They can help you take advantage of this placement, and they can help you get connected with that placement and really get the best out of it. So one thing, probably the best thing that you could do, is write every single day. If you have Lagna Lord in the 3rd house, the act of writing things down, or even just having a pen and doodling or writing down your ideas or your to-do list, that's very, very, very powerful for you over any other placement of the Lagna Lord in the chart.
And I just want to connect the dots for you because hands, 3rd house. Communication, which can be written or verbal, 3rd house. So therefore, writing every day is really good for you.
Yeah, and it's always going to activate that placement and kind of strengthen it over and over again. So one thing that's also connected to this that you can do is have a pen with you, or when you're talking to someone or communicating, especially if you need to get an important point across, you can kind of just like sit and just like fiddle with a pen.
Yeah. It's your adult fidget.
It's your adult fidget, and this is very beneficial for a person with Lagna Lord in the 3rd house. Also, the way that you can think about this almost, because the 3rd house, a person with a strong 3rd house could be an excellent salesman. And I think, sometimes salesmen, depending on what they're selling you, sometimes they need to have you sign something, right?
Yeah.
They need to get the
close the deal.
Closing the deal is when you sign the piece of paper. And a really talented salesman who may have Lagna Lord in the 3rd house, it's like you're on the fence. You're almost ready to be closed. You're almost ready to make that final purchase. You're almost ready to sign on the dotted line. And it's like, oh, well, I need a pen. And then they have, it's like magic.
Oh, don't think any further. We have that pen.
We have the pen.
Sign.
Yeah, that's Lagna Lord in the 3rd house. You can have the pen ready, right when you need the person to sign on the dotted line. So another really helpful tip for Lagna Lord in the 3rd house is either to go for walks frequently, so that's that 3rd house short travel. A lot of ideas can come to you, really helpful ideas about whatever your life path is, or your career, or whatever you need to
trying to figure out a problem.
Yeah, problem solving ideas can come when you're kind of like walking around.
Yeah.
Or you can drive around too. That will accomplish the same goal. And one final thing is, because the 3rd house represents the neck, shoulders, and arms, and because it carries that Mars energy, no matter what planets are placed there, it can be really helpful for you to do shoulder-oriented workouts, like shoulder press or things like that where you're pushing. Obviously, you don't want to only do that and then get like all weird.
Ignore the
giant shoulders.
Don't forget your leg day.
Yeah, don't skip leg day. But this type of workout, some astrologers have seen this being very helpful for increasing your ability to engage in self-effort. So it's like strengthening, because you're strengthening your shoulders, you're strengthening your 3rd house, you're strengthening your communication ability, you're strengthening your ability to accomplish your goals through your efforts. So that can be very helpful for you.
Yeah, well, we hope you found this information really helpful and useful. And in case you aren't sure if you have your Lagna Lord placed in the 3rd house, or you don't know what your Lagna Lord is or where it is, we have a free birth chart calculator on our website. So check it out. It's very easy, it's free, and you can find out your Vedic birth chart, and then you'll see where your lagna lord is placed. And we're doing a whole series on these videos of lagna lord in each house. So if we haven't made one yet for you, keep an eye out.